วัสดีค่ะยินดีต้อนรับเข้าสู่ Bangkok Offstage พอดแคสต์ไทยอังกฤษรายการแรกที่จะพาไปเจาะลึกแวดวงศิลปะการแสดงในกรุงเทพ
Hello and welcome to the Bangkok Offstage podcast, the first bilingual podcast on the Bangkok performing arts scene.
แอมแก้วตา
And I'm Amitha. In episode 9 of season 4, Bangkok Offstage is taking you beyond the borders of Southeast Asia once again. This time, we talk to Sri Vamsi Matta, a theatre artist from India, about his ongoing performance Come Eat With Me, which has been attracting a lot of media attention in India since it began early this year. Come Eat With Me takes place in people's homes, where Vamsi initiates and encourages conversation and reflection on caste discrimination through live performance, cooking, and the act of eating together. In this episode, Vamsi tells us what it means to be a Dalit, why he chooses to explore the subject of caste through food, and why deliciousness matters regardless of whom we feed. This episode is in English. ในเอพิโซด 9 ของซีซั่น 4 Bangkok Offstage จะพาผู้ฟังเดินทางออกไปนอกเอเชียตะวันออกเฉียงใต้อีกครั้งนะคะโดยครั้งนี้เราได้ไปพูดคุยกับศรีวามศรีมัทธาศิลปินละครเวทีชาวอินเดียเกี่ยวกับการแสดงของเขาที่มีชื่อว่า Come Eat With Me หรือมากินข้าวกับฉันสิซึ่งได้มีการกล่าวถึงมากมายในสื่อของอินเดียตั้งแต่เริ่มจัดแสดงมาเมื่อต้นปีนี้ Come Eat With Me เป็นการแสดงที่เข้าไปในบ้านของคนดูเพื่อกระตุ้นบทสนทนาเรื่องการแบ่งแยกวรรณะในศาสนาฮินดูผ่านการแสดงสดการทำอาหารและการทานอาหารร่วมกันในเอพิโซดนี้วามศรีเล่าให้ฟังถึงการเป็นคนชนชั้นดาลิตว่าเป็นอย่างไรบ้างทำไมเขาถึงเลือกที่จะสำรวจเรื่องชนชั้นวรรณะผ่านอาหารและทำไมความอร่อยเป็นสิ่งสำคัญไม่ว่าคุณจะทำอาหารให้ใครทานเอพิโซดนี้เป็นภาษาอังกฤษค่ะ Hi Vamsi, welcome to Bangkok Offstage. Thank you so much for being with us.
No, thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you.
Let's start off by talking about Come Eat With Me. Could you briefly introduce us to your ongoing show, Come Eat With Me?
So Come Eat With Me is basically an exploration, exploring the relationship between the caste system and the food. It started off as a personal project where I wanted to look at, because food, the kind of food you eat is always, it depends on the social identity you come from, not just in India, but anywhere in the world. In a country like India, there's so many restrictions about what one can eat, what one shouldn't eat, what is allowed, what is legal, what is illegal. And it sort of depends on people who have power and who don't have power.
Right.
So this was, it's also like an autobiographical narration, personal stories, stories from literature, academic work, everything.
Okay.
Sort of put into a performance that explores this unique relationship food and caste identity has. Yeah.
Caste identity. So you're part of this caste called Dalit, correct?
Yes.
Or the untouchable caste. Can you talk a bit about, for those of us who don't know what Dalits were, at first I was like, what is Dalit? But I was like, oh, okay, so it's the untouchable caste. So I know it from another word. The more I read about it, it's like, oh, there are other words that's described. It's like scheduled caste and all of that. Can you speak a bit more about who Dalits are and a bit about the caste system in India?
Very well. We are not untouchables anymore. The law has outlawed it.
Right.
Post independence of the country, it's a law that practicing of untouchability is
which
prohibited.
Means right.
So the official category we're called is scheduled caste or scheduled caste. Dalit is a word that has been reclaimed by the people. Like the famous, there are many, there's a Marathi writer who has coined this word. Dalit means broken, but
broken.
Many political activists, artists, writers have reclaimed this word Dalit. So Dalit is a political identity. There are people who might not agree with me, but for me, it is something that gives me power.
Why is it called the scheduled class?
Uh,
Caste,
so
sorry.
I'll just quickly
Right.
brief history of so the Hindu religion
Mm-hmm.
has this social hierarchical system called the caste system,
Mm-hmm.
where there are four varnas.
Mm-hmm.
The Brahmins, or the priestly
Mm-hmm.
community, they're on the top, and then the Kshatriya or the warrior community, they come next, and then there is the Vaishya community, who are merchants who
Mm-hmm.
deal with market work,
Mm-hmm.
and then there are Shudras, who are supposed to serve the top three
Okay.
castes, and then there are outcasts who are the Atishudras, or as we would call them, scheduled caste or Dalits,
Mm-hmm.
or formerly known as untouchables,
Mm-hmm.
who are not part of the caste system. We are outside of the caste system.
Right.
So this is written in various scriptures. The
Mm-hmm.
most infamous one is the Manusmriti,
Mm-hmm.
which talks about who are the Atishudras and what they're supposed to do, what they're not supposed to do.
Right.
And their job was to do the things like cleaning,
Mm-hmm.
especially sanitary cleaning, removing of the carcasses. It is often works that are low and menial would be ascribed to them.
Right.
And because of the notions of purity,
Mm-hmm.
the rest of the castes assume that the untouchables are impure and polluted. You're
Mm-hmm.
not supposed to touch them, hence the
Right.
name untouchable.
Right. So it's not untouchable as in you're not allowed to criticize them or they're too sacred to be touched. It's a
No.
complete opposite.
It's opposite. You're
Right.
not supposed to touch them. They will pollute you. They're impure. They're dirty.
Right.
So that is what
Mm-hmm.
broadly the caste system is, and caste system affects, and it sort of discriminates and oppresses people in various fronts.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of food, our food is looked
Mm-hmm.
down upon.
Mm.
Our work is looked down upon.
Right.
Like anywhere where people in power oppresses the person
Mm-hmm.
without power. This has been happening for a long time, and many leaders have fought for it. And the main one of the biggest leaders is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who's also the writer of the Constitution of India.
Mm-hmm.
He was from the Dalit community, and he fought for our rights. One of the biggest achievements is bringing in affirmative action, like reservation in educational institutions, in administrative places. So yeah, that is like the brief
Right.
overview.
Because you said that even though it's been outlawed, right? Like the caste system is supposed officially doesn't exist officially, right?
Well, caste system exists.
Right.
Untouchability doesn't exist.
Okay, so what does that
So
mean when they outlawed untouchability and yet discrimination persists despite reservation, right?
That's the thing. That's what untouchability is, one way of oppressing, but there are many ways. Like you're looked down upon. You are not given opportunities.
Right.
Even in reservation, it's highly debated concept. People who are supposedly, so when you look at reservation, there is there are people who don't get reservation, who are from the oppressor caste. They sort of the debate is around how reservation is eating away merit, the idea of merit.
Right.
So
reservation, just to be clear for everyone, that reservation is basically it's a bit like quota. There should be this number reserved.
It is quota.
Right, reserved for Dalits in the government, in educational institutions, in universities.
Yeah, and not just Dalits. So Dalits are scheduled caste. Then there are scheduled tribes. These are Adivasi tribal people. Then there is backward classes.
Okay.
So in the caste system, there are the Shudras who, some of them are backward. Some of them have become landowning castes and they have sort of, they went up the food chain, but there are some folks who are still oppressed and, they're called the backward classes or backward castes. So backward caste, SC, scheduled caste, and scheduled tribes. These are the three categories of
Right.
people
Okay.
who can avail reservation.
I still don't understand what backward classes are, though. Like the other ones are, I understand.
So
but
backward castes are
caste, yeah.
So according to the hierarchy, there is, as I said, there's Brahmin, there is Kshatriya, the warrior class, then there is Vaishya, the merchant class, and then there are Shudras, whose responsibility is to serve the top three.
Right.
And some of these castes have not been able to, go up
Right.
in the food chain. So
Right.
some of them have been given a backward caste status.
Interesting.
And it varies from parts of the country.
Right. Right.
And according to the state government, there is reservation availability for them.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet there's still discrimination. There's still
There is. Yes,
Right.
yes. The upper caste, basically. I'm not a fan of the terminology upper and lower.
Right. So what do you suggest instead?
So
Like
dominant castes or oppressor castes, or in India we use a word called Savarna.
Savarna.
Because it's the Varna system, and Savarna means good Varna.
Which means?
So Varna, so the caste system is also called the Varna system in some of the Indian languages. So Savarna means good Varna, or they have Varna, and the people who are oppressed and non-dominant caste are called avarnas, the ones who don't have Varna.
Okay. That's interesting. In Thai too, like the word Varna, Vanna, yeah.
Varna,
yeah.
Varna, yeah.
And but castes and class, economic class are completely different, right? Like you can be Dalit and still be upper class or middle or low, working or even lower. So
class has got nothing to do with it. Caste is mostly, it's a social identity.
Right.
So people, that is why caste system still prevails, even though people have financial capital. They don't have social or cultural capital.
Right.
And to be powerful means to have both social, cultural, like in India, if you look at a Brahmin who comes from higher social capital, is still treated better and is respected compared to a higher class with no social, cultural capital.
So you can be a much richer Dalit than a much poorer Brahmin, but you still have more social capital as a Brahmin who's not as wealthy, who's not as successful, for example.
Absolutely.
And just before we go to move on to something more, a more personal question, religion as well, right? Because caste system is based on it's a Hindu system, but now Dalits have converted to many religions. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is true. But as it so happened that even the people have converted, caste system also sort of traveled into those religions.
Interesting.
Because if you look at Christianity or Islam, at the root, there's no caste system.
Right.
But in India, there are Dalits who have converted to Islam and Christianity, but they still face caste discrimination in them. Right now, there's a huge movement happening in the country where only Dalit Hindus, Buddhists, and Sikhs get reservation, but Dalit Christians and Dalit Muslims don't get the reservation.
Because they're
because they have converted and caste system is not there in it. They can't. But right now, there's the Supreme Court of India has asked the government to create a commission that will look at it, and this is a fight that is being fought for a long time.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you go back? Usually we ask guests on our show to just go back to when they started the performing arts or the arts and all of that. But I think because of your identity, it's important to go back a bit to your childhood as well. How did you grow up? What did it mean to grow up as a Dalit?
So very lately, I mean, I knew our family was different because yeah, because of our identity. There were so many people who have converted to Christianity. So my family would have mix of people who were Hindus, who were Christians. There would be Buddhists also because Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, he started a movement called the Navayana Buddhism, which many people have converted to. So there were Buddhists. There was someone called rationalists in my family who wouldn't believe in God. They would talk about rationality. So I had all of this around, and my dad is also a writer in my mother tongue, that is Telugu. So he would write a lot of fiction. He would write short stories, and we would read. And me and my brother, at a very early age, we had access to literature that was not generally available for an age group like mine. So we would read feminist literature, we would read progressive literature, political literature.
Interesting.
So, and there was always Dr. Ambedkar's photo in our house. You could see it as, right behind.
Yeah.
So we sort of knew we were different. But the more I learned about my parents' experiences in their colleges, both of my parents were doctors. My mom was a human doctor. My dad was an animal doctor. He was a veterinarian.
Oh, cool.
But they would talk about. I would see the other doctors, my mother's friends, and they would be different. Even though my mom and they have the same kind of degree. But the kind of work my mom wanted to do. My mom did very groundwork. She would work in local clinics. She would hardly charge any money. But the other doctors, they would work in these private firms. Even though they were working in a government hospital in the morning, in the evening they would work in these private hospitals that they would pay a lot. And how they would treat my mother, I would see that even in their staff room. The other doctors who come from dominant caste would the fear of how to speak because of the colonization, we had access to English.
Right.
English is our biggest weapon for the oppressed in the country.
Interesting.
But my parents who've studied all their life in their mother tongue. To go into these spaces which are very elite, to have access to language, they would be feared, they would be scared to talk because but both of them were very confident people who were sort of, me and my brother, we've imbibed that. So we knew we were Dalits, and when you're in school, by the end of your class 10, you're supposed to, if you're supposed to tell that for the records, you have to tell that you come from the scheduled caste for records.
For what? Oh, interesting.
So that is when the rest of the class would know about us. Until then, we would be the same, but the moment people realize, they come from this, so people would change the way they talk, the way they share their food with us.
You're right.
And the moment I came to my +1 and +2.
Class 1, class 2 is how old?
+1 and +2.
Okay.
So after class 10, there is +1 and +2.
Okay.
After that, you go to a professional college. That's how
the
system
so you're
is.
like late teens.
Yes. I was my 15, 16.
Okay.
So that is when I was the quota student, because I had reservation. People would be upset with me that you will be able to get this off easily, unlike us
All right.
And this is something that goes on, and the system also doesn't protect us. You're immediately labeled as a reservation student, and everyone looks down upon you, saying that you're not capable enough. That is why you're and no one has an idea about what affirmative action is. What does it mean to have representation? Because it is not taught in school.
Right.
Like it's briefly mentioned that there's caste system and there are these people, that Ambedkar is a Dalit
Right.
leader, but that's it. There is no nuance to it. There's no reflection. There is no people talk about caste as, oh, it doesn't exist anymore. It only exists in rural parts.
Right.
But that isn't true.
Because where did you go to school then?
So I went to a school in Visakhapatnam, Andhra Pradesh. That was where I was born. This all happened there. It was a fairly mid-level city, I would say. It was a port city. There was naval base there. So fairly mixed. It's not just people who spoke Telugu or people who are residents of Andhra Pradesh, but they were also people from different parts of the country. So fairly exposed to people who are other cultures as well. But at the end of the day, whichever culture, in every culture, a Dalit is a Dalit. Yeah, you know.
Yeah. And I think I read somewhere that your brother was discriminated against when he brought beef to school, right?
No, it's
to lunch, or was that or did I mix up someone else's story?
No. It's a story that I tell as part of my performance. Like this is a very like beef consumption is like cow slaughter is banned in India, in most parts of India. And
sacred animal.
Yes. But if you look at the history of food, now it has gone up the price, but beef was the most cheapest meat available, and people from the marginalized communities, the Dalits, the backward castes, and Muslims would eat beef, was their staple.
Right.
But post the slaughter, it's always discriminated against because it was a sacred animal, and people who would eat that would be looked down upon. And this is Ambedkar in his book, he talks about, he's written so many books, and one of the books he talks about, is it because people eat beef, are they considered as untouchables, or is it because of the economic situation of the untouchables that they would eat beef?
Right.
So this is a conversation that still goes on, like, how is it because we eat the meat of a dead cow, we have become untouchables?
Right.
Or is it the other way around?
Yeah.
But beef has been a major topic of contention around people in India. Like, so you're looked down upon. And anyway, people who don't eat meat, they anyway look down upon everyone who eats meat. But people who do eat meat, which is not beef, they also look down upon people who eat beef. So
interesting. Okay.
So if you look at any Dalit autobiographies that are written, food plays an important role, and the shame that it is prescribed to people are disgusted by it. They call names. They say it's smelly. They call it impure. So the scriptures that I was talking about, the Hindu scriptures, the Manusmriti, it sort of tells what the Savarna, the upper caste, has to eat. And only food that is half eaten, the meat of dead animals, is supposed to be eaten by the untouchables, or the lower castes, or oppressed class castes.
Right. We'll come back to food a bit later, but can we go back to in school? You said you were looked down upon by other students. What about teachers? That's very much part of the system as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just me, but this is the story of every marginalized kid in school. Like recently, instead of talking about my experience, I'll tell this story. Inder Meghwal, he was a 9-year-old boy in Rajasthan. He was hit by the teacher because he touched a water pot that was meant for the teacher, and he passed away.
What? Oh, so he was beaten. He was
He
beaten.
was hit.
Beat.
He was a young kid. He was hit,
Yeah.
but he succumbed to the injury.
Oh my God. And
And
what happened to the teacher?
he was arrested, but
Okay.
this
Okay,
is
at
just,
least.
but
But a 9-year-old.
yeah, and this, so I'll leave it at there. Like,
But
just
this is the
because,
thing, right? Like the untouchability, although outlawed, is still completely practiced, completely
yeah.
believed.
So the point is that the student or the kid, young kid, touched the water pot, and he has sort of polluted the water pot. And
Right.
how dare he pollute that water pot by merely touching it?
Oh my God. Yeah. And even university level, right? It's very difficult for students to get, and there has been like high profile cases where Dalit students commit suicide because they
Yes.
can't get anywhere.
Yes.
Right? Can you
Yes.
talk a bit
Yeah.
about that as well? And isn't that one of the things that encouraged you to get
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
activism as well?
Yes. 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 Absolutely. So I was doing theater for a long time, but uh, uh, the moment I came up against talking about my identity, I would hide. As you were talking about Yashika Dutt's book Coming Out as a Dalit,
Right.
she talks about something called passing off.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I would pass off as an dominant caste person because I would speak English. My parents were in a better financial status. I studied in one of the premier institutes of the country.
Right.
But I was there only because of reservation.
Mm-hmm.
If not for reservation, that would not have been possible. So I would
That's
hide
right.
from my identity. I would not talk
Right.
about. But then in 2016, a PhD scholar from Hyderabad Central University was institutionally murdered. Rohit Vemula. After he passed away, there was a lot of like the movement picked up. Everyone was talking about it. That was one of my moments of I can't take this anymore.
Right.
I
Right.
need to stand up for my identity because it's not about me anymore, because there are folks, there are people like me who might not have the kind of privilege I have. I mean, I'm still calling
Right.
it privilege.
Right.
Who couldn't get English education, who are not confident with their
Right.
work. So that was the moment where I said, this is not something that I can't take. I'm going to be much more vocal about it.
Right.
And I was doing theater. I would talk about many things. I would talk about feminist values. I would talk about capitalism. I would talk about the environment. But why am I not talking about caste?
Interesting.
And that is when I've decided that if at all my art is going to go out and caste is going to be my point of view, I'm going to be standing from as a Dalit man,
Right.
and perform and do and produce my art.
Very. And but before this, can you go back to why you hide it? Because you didn't want to deal with it? It was too much of a burden, or it was just this is not, you don't want it to define you, or
no. I was scared because the moment people know that I'm here because of quota or reservation, they would forget what I'm capable of. I would be reduced to my identity.
Right.
That is what Rohit Vemula has said. He was reduced to his immediate identity and nearest possibility.
Right.
And that is the story of every marginalized student in the country.
Right.
Their merit is questioned. They are deemed unworthy.
Right.
Like everything is criticized: the food they eat, the language they speak, the clothes they wear, the ideals they stand by, or decisions they take is always under the radar.
Right. And that's what Yashika Dutt said, right? She herself, unlike a bit different from you, she was inspired by this, I guess, the suicide as well to come out.
Yes.
And for some Dalits, they change, like their parents, their grandparents changed the name because I think we discussed this a bit earlier before we started recording, that there are Dalits whose names are recognizable right away as
Yeah,
Dalit, and some
yeah,
of them change it so that
yeah, yeah,
she talked what like what you said, she feared coming out as a Dalit because
yeah,
of the consequences you
yes,
face
yes, yes,
socially and everything
yes,
professionally.
yes,
Did you
yes,
face
yes.
any consequence apart from, the obvious looking down upon? What about professionally? What about in theater?
Yeah,
Did
yeah,
you?
yeah, because it's highly gate kept. Art is very much people in power, people who made, like
Mm,
when I do, like Come Eat With Me, for
mm-hmm,
example, when I started performing, now it has expanded and it exploded. Everyone wants to be a part of it. Everyone wants to talk about it. But when I started writing, applying for grants,
mm.
there
In
were questions
India.
in India. The first question is, okay, what is your form? This doesn't
Oh,
look like theater.
right, right.
What is your aesthetic? What is your language? So who comes up with these rules?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Interesting.
who people in power
Right,
come up with rules?
right.
So who defines what is classical and what is folk?
Mm-hmm,
Uh, so people so people in power come up with these rules. People in power gatekeep these places.
mm-hmm,
What kind of play can be performed?
mm-hmm,
What kind of story can be told?
mm-hmm,
Before Come Eat With Me, I was part of a writing program called First Draft by Indian Ensemble. It's a theater company based out of Bangalore.
mm-hmm,
That is where I wrote my first play, Star in the Sky. Star in the Sky is actually uh, it has been inspired
mm-hmm,
from the life and death of Rohit Vemula.
mm-hmm,
It's a short story that my dad wrote in Telugu.
mm-hmm,
So I've taken it and I worked on it and I made it into a play. So when I was writing that play as part of the lab, they would ask me, okay, find inspirations, find. So if you look at how caste is written or spoken about in art forms, it's always from a gaze of the savarna, the oppressor, the
mm-hmm,
dominant caste member. So it's always pity.
mm-hmm,
It's always only the brutalized body of the marginalized is shown.
mm-hmm,
But as I said, we were reduced to our identity. Uh,
mm-hmm,
we are reduced to as locations of pain, locations of oppression.
mm-hmm.
But we are much more than that.
Right.
So I couldn't find inspirations. I couldn't find plays that were written, uh,
It's like
especially
those things didn't inspire you, basically.
they were not talking about me. I was
Right.
invisible. I was not seen.
Mm-hmm.
And that is also about representation.
Yeah.
So very few were written, or if they were written in languages that was not accessible to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
But in a mainstream theater, uh,
Mm-hmm.
I, me and people like me were invisible.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, our ideas were not taken seriously.
Right.
Uh, part of theater festivals, or we're not
Mm-hmm.
on the radar. Uh,
Right.
we were still the outsiders.
Hmm. Especially if you are openly, I'm a Dalit
Yeah,
artist,
yeah,
you
yeah,
declare.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. No, even if it is not declared, it's not just me and my. Even
Mm-hmm.
if there are markers of
Mm-hmm.
someone, what they're
Mm-hmm.
capable of, and these are assumptions
Right.
people would make. Uh,
Right.
and it's also something that especially kids and young people from marginalized communities, they lack the confidence of now
Mm-hmm.
I am in a place where I can ask for my work. I value my work, but this was not me a couple of years ago. I would be
Mm-hmm.
scared because I know that my merit will be questioned.
Right.
uh, so uh, it's sort of, I'm intimidated by the system, by the
Mm-hmm.
process,
Mm.
by the institutions.
Mm-mm.
So it's not just the people who gatekeep, but by design, these spaces, these institutions have kept me away because I don't perform a certain way, or I don't speak a certain way, or I don't write a certain way.
Can you go back a bit to, because you said earlier before you started Come Eat With Me and all of, or, you know, talking about caste in your work, in your theater work, what led you to theater to begin it with? And what kind of theater did you do earlier on? Because you think you did Greek and all of these things as well, right?
No, so since childhood, I was very interested in performing, and because literature was a huge part
Right.
of my childhood, I was always inclined.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came for my bachelor's at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, there was a wonderful theatre society on campus where I studied. So that was my first interaction with theatre or with proper proscenium theatre. So as part during my bachelor's, I used to perform with them. That is where I've learned. I haven't gone to a theatre school or a drama school. I've learned it on my job. I started doing theatre. That's how I learned theatre.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I used to do a lot of theatre with the theatre society of the campus. It was called Rangmanch. Rangmanch. And so as when we were performing there, we did some amazing productions, and what we would do we would go to college competitions.
Oh, cool.
Student theatre festivals.
That's cool.
I would go as a participant, and then I sort of realized, because another thing for me to have gone to theatre is I was a science student.
Ah, okay. What did you study precisely?
So I did my bachelor's of science in research.
Okay.
My subjects were material science and biology.
Okay.
But the way science is done in India was not very conducive to people who come from marginalized backgrounds.
How so?
Again, language, the fear of being rejected. It's science is still an elite space as many problems are in gatekeeping in art, there's gatekeeping in science also. So who will get a good project? Who decides to get a good guide? Who will
get good research funding
and lab space. So all of this have sort of pushed me away from science.
Did you eventually finish the degree, or you changed?
I have finished my degree.
Oh, okay.
So I finished my degree. I have a bachelor's degree, which is of no use right now. But so and then I asked myself, what is it that I want to do? There were plays that I've done which have been received very well. So sort of instilled confidence in me. So I said, okay, is this something that I can do? And I asked myself, okay, I'm going to give it some time. I took about a year time. I started working with productions outside of campus. I started professional theater. I was working as an actor, as a production person. And then I started teaching theater in schools.
Oh, cool. In like high school or?
Yeah, for school children.
Okay.
Until class grade 8, I was teaching children up till grade 8. So I was able to manage, to get some food and a roof under me. So my parents were like, if you're able to feed yourself, that is good. And over time, things have gotten better. And now I'm able to do work, earn some money, and produce art.
Right. Nice. And like we said before, that Dalits are discriminated against in all parts of society. Why do you want to focus your work about Dalit on specifically food?
So in India, there's a culture of pure vegetarian restaurants. So when you look at what is pure vegetarian? Like, if I have to dissect that word,
interesting.
They are offering you food that is pure vegetarian and that is cooked by people from certain caste. So it's not just about the food being vegetarian, but the hands that prepare it
cannot be Dalits.
So there's a lot of Brahmin eateries in the country that sort of so the Brahmin eateries are restaurants that are run by the Brahmin folk. So right from the people who take the decisions until to who cook, they're all Brahmin. So the reason that is important to talk about is, So Brahmin eateries offer you that pure vegetarian food
Mm-hmm.
that is not only just pure vegetarian, it's also cooked by Brahmins.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what Brahmin folk,
Mm-hmm.
they assume that because Brahmin cook is cooking the food, it is not polluted, it is not impure.
Mm-hmm.
So my thought process was, okay, what if I, a Dalit man, is going to cook food and feed people and tell stories? Will they come, sit with me and eat?
Mm-hmm.
So that is the uh, idea. So I cook food, I tell stories, and I feed people.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have to crudely tell about my performance, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
And many caste reformers have talked about intercaste dining, intercaste marriages.
Right.
So as a social movement as well,
Interesting.
I sort of subvert the idea of going and coming and eating with me, because there's also this culture in India where especially dominant and oppressor caste politicians, as a way to tell that they're casteless or they don't believe in caste, they go to Dalit households and Adivasi households and eat. But it's a photo op. It's
right. That's what I've been reading. Politicians going to Dalits, except they bring in everything of their own, right? Like including cutleries and plates. So it's a bit of a show.
Yeah. So the idea was to, subvert the idea. I am not, you are not going to come. I'm going to come to your house.
Interesting.
I would cook and I would tell stories and I would feed you. So that is it. Like, and I also feel when you're sitting together to have a meal,
right,
the people who are sitting, their vulnerability sort of drops, I feel. So they are more open to having a conversation. So I'm a huge fan of talking to people and eat, instead of, like, nowadays people want to watch something and eat,
right.
But I prefer sitting and eating and talking to people. So that's how the form has come in place.
Okay, so did it start off the same way as it is now, or did
so
you
it was
develop
much intimate? So I used to start off, when I started performing, I would perform to 10 people, 15 people.
And
now,
you cook and you sit and you eat. And in what spaces how did you contact people?
So I would go to people's houses, actually.
Like knock on their door. You didn't call, you didn't email.
I mean, I would put up an ad, and I've asked people to sign up if you want to host me. So people would sign up to host me. So I would go to their house, I would use their kitchen. I would cook in their kitchen, and then in their living room I would perform. And now it has gone to, I book venues, or people invite me to venues where I perform for 50, 60 people.
Wow. But you still sit and eat with them and everything?
Yes, absolutely.
And you cook by yourself, or do you
when I'm cooking for smaller folk, I cook myself.
Okay, very nice.
But if I'm cooking for more than 30 people, I get a help. Again, people from the community who would cook with me.
Okay, so people who are part of who would come and watch your show.
No. People from my community, from Dalit community.
Okay.
So I would find a cook from the community who would help me cook.
Do people see you cook as well? Like, do they come in?
No. I mean, I'm not going to stop them, but that has never happened.
But the show doesn't start until you present them with the food, or?
So the show starts with with the performance. So there's a setup, I perform. And then at the end of the performance, I share the food.
Can you talk a bit about the performance itself? What do they get to listen to? What do they get to see?
Yeah. So one thing I need to tell you is when I invite people, or when they buy a ticket, I ask them to carry a portion of food that they like as well.
Oh, interesting.
So at the end of the show, they can share that,
their
food with everyone and talk about it as well. So yeah, my performance starts the moment I cut my first onion. That is when it starts. So as of now, I make 3 things. I make a chicken curry. That is my mom's recipe. I make rice, and I make a vegetarian dish. It depends on what it is. So I cook that, and then I sit down for my performance. So my performance is it sort of ranges from Dalit autobiographies to mythology, to news reports, to academic literature that talks about caste and food. It talks about early memories of food. It talks about notions of purity.
Right.
And it talks about recipes.
Right.
And this the performance goes. It has poetry. It has published papers, academic journal papers as well.
Right.
And a lot of literature written by Dalit folk. I share all of that. And then there is I open I bring my vessels where the food is. I open it and I ask people to start eating.
And as you eat, what kind of conversation have you had with? I know you've done it so many times. How many years have you done this?
No. It's I started this year, March.
Oh, you just started. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I feel like I thought I've heard about it longer. Okay.
Yeah, so people talk about various things. They talk about, because for almost an hour and a half, we've been extensively talking about caste and food.
Right.
Now people are, one, they're very hungry.
Yeah.
And two, they're like, they want to share. Or they're like, they're very anxious and not want to share.
Interesting. Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Because caste is a very touchy subject in the country.
When it was in intimate settings, have you ever, because sometimes when in smaller group, you're more face to face, did that ever get more tense or more aggressive?
Touch wood, thank God.
Not
it has
not
never
yet.
happened. Never happened. It was always a great space for reflection.
Interesting.
There'd be times when people. So another thing that I need to tell you about my performances, when I'm telling stories, in between these stories, I sort of open it to my audience, and I ask my audience to share stories as well.
Okay. Do they always, or sometimes you get
sometimes
silence?
So when it is a smaller group, everyone shares.
Okay. Yeah,
but when it is a large group, I sort of make it 5 responses, 10 responses. Sometimes people are sharing and they just want to share more. So they keep on going. There are times when I was doing intimate shows, it would just go on for 3 hours because people are talking, they're telling stuff.
Wow. And
because that's a thing. I've become a huge believer of this. When there's a whole conversation going around group therapy sessions, and how the role of a therapist, how they have to be vulnerable as well. So because I'm being vulnerable with my audience, where I share very intimate details, they're automatically, I'm not a fan of this safe space idea, but they become familiar. They want to share with me.
Right.
They talk about their fears. There's a lot of messiness in people's lives, and because people think that asking a question, saying a certain thing would be improper, so they don't. But because now they're in a vulnerable space, they're like, can I share this messiness with you? Can I open up a little more? Because I'm scared, because it's also fear. And the reason I've designed it this way is I don't want to attack people. I don't want to confront them, because it is easily, it can easily be that. It can easily be confrontational, because
dining table, yes.
And also talking about caste, because people can talk about class, but the moment you talk about caste, everyone is implicated. Especially in spaces like these, because it is who gets to access these spaces of performance. It's mostly people in power, people who have privilege, and most of them come from oppressor caste backgrounds and dominant caste backgrounds. So when you talk about caste, immediately they are implicated in it, and they cut off. They don't want to have a conversation. But instead, I tried to make my space inviting, to make sure that why don't we have conversation? Because annihilation of caste is not my problem. It is your problem as well. It's not just the problem of the marginalized. It is everyone. Brahminical patriarchy affects everyone. So it is not my job to fight this.
Right.
It is our job to fight this. There might be different ways of fighting this.
Right.
But we are in this together.
Right.
So that is the kind of inviting space I will say this very confidently, that I have managed to create this space.
How many
Because
home? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Keep going. Keep going.
No, and that is the reason I don't think I've had a issue or an incident until now.
Right. They want you in their home to begin with.
Yes.
Are these mostly young families, young people?
Yes.
And are they usually of another caste?
Yeah. Most of them are from the oppressor caste.
So like Brahmin and the other.
Brahmin, yes.
Interesting. But more like would you say like 20s to their 30s and
So
or you've seen like a whole family of like different generations as well?
No, I haven't. I mean, people have come as audience, like mother and daughter, mother and son, two older couple. So my my oldest audience member was about 64 years of age.
Okay.
And the youngest was, I think, 12 or 14 years old.
Okay. And do you see the difference in like openness or comfort level in this type of, or it's such a mix?
No,
like you've seen young people who are uncomfortable
it's a mix.
as well.
It's a mix. But the younger, the 20 to 30 age group are a little more open to a dialogue, because also we live in a society where there's constant oppressor guilt that goes around. So they immediately want to like, oh, we have done this. No, but reflect on it. So many folks who have written about my work, they asked me, what is your ideal audience reaction? As I said, I don't want to shock them. I don't want to confront them. I want them to reflect.
Right.
Yeah, because I think reflection is one of the aesthetic of my production.
Right.
Where you sit and reflect.
What have been like the most common questions or the most common comments? Have you seen like a pattern or?
So it's always about gaze. So when I said I'm going to cook chicken, you were like, oh, nice, you're going to cook chicken. But in India, if people come to me and like, why are you cooking chicken? Why don't you cook beef? There's a certain
because you're Dalit,
right? There's a certain exoticization that the gaze has, but as much as this is the food, people also are running away from their identity. Like until I moved to Bangalore, to a different city, I've never eaten beef. My parents have that never came into our houses. And also to be able to eat, to be able to eat beef in households where the society is largely Savarna society, or the you can't take it. It's not safe to be able to
to eat beef.
Yeah.
Because didn't the government crack down on slaughterhouses
So
recently?
This is before.
Okay.
The kind of people would give you stares. People would talk about. So Dalit families who are living in urban setups, they are scared of it. There are people who assert it, but I come from a family who didn't want to hold on to their identity. So if I want to talk about my memory, I'm going to talk about the memory I have.
Right. Right.
Because as much as Come Eat With Me is about caste and food, it is also a tribute to my mother. And many Dalit women who have sort of revolutionized the kitchen.
How so? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So as part of the performance, I talk about these small ingenious tricks, both indigenous and ingenious tricks that they would use. Like, for example, I'll give an example. So my grandma, my dad's mom, they were a family of 7. And one earning member in the family. So how do you feed not just nutritious food, but tasty food? because people talk about feeding the oppressed means only giving them nutritious food. That is not it. Why don't they deserve tasty food? So if my grandmom had to cook shrimp, she would get 250 grams of shrimp, but a kilo of vegetables. She would mix and cook. Sort of the flavor is retained,
Right.
but the family of 7 is fed. So that is ingenious. Like,
Right.
So these are, I talk about, things like this. A recipe, my mom's recipe. So if you look at chicken curry on the internet, Indian chicken curry, people talk about this one ingredient, cashew nut paste, so as to give it a creamy texture. So when I was recreating my mom's recipe, I was like, but this is missing in my mom's recipe.
Right.
My mom didn't use it.
Right.
So what my mom used to use is poppy seed paste. She would take a spoonful of poppy seeds, she would crush them,
And
she would
much
add.
cheaper?
So now it is different. But the thing is, imagine having a kilo of cashews and a kilo of poppy seeds. How often do you, like, cashew seeds can be used again for many things. And it is not sustainable to have a kilo of cashew nuts compared to a kilo of poppy seeds. So poppy seeds would be used only for this. Now poppy seeds is costlier. But back then it was cheaper, and you would only use a little. Hardly a spoonful for a kilo of chicken.
Right.
So that was my mom's geniusness. Like, she used poppy seeds, which is much cheaper, much more easily available, instead of cash. So I talk about these. There are so many, because especially in Dalit households or marginalized households, the women who cook or anyone who cooks, they have to think of, what the society is going to say, what people in their house like, what is the financial situation, what are their idiosyncrasies, what is available, what is not available.
Did she cook for your lunch to take to school as well when you guys were kids?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And did you cook with her ever, or you learned to cook later?
No, that's how I learned. She was my teacher for cooking. Yeah.
So you knew how to cook by the time you had to leave home and
absolutely.
everything.
So I would cook. So my mom was as I said, she was a doctor in a government hospital. Right. She was working in the, she was an anesthesiologist. So she would have night shifts. So we would call them night duties. So she would be in the hospital during nights. So she would leave in the afternoon.
Right.
So it was me, my dad, and my brother. So we learned to cook. So
So you had to.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go back to how Dalits are discriminated in the arts and cultural sector in India. How are artists fighting back against discrimination? Dalit artists.
Being vocal, because now some organizations are looking at optics as well. Like, what does it mean to have someone on board? The
diversity and inclusion.
Yeah. So it's still difficult. It is. So that's the thing. Like, for example, Vamsi is a Dalit artist. But they don't do this for a Brahmin. They don't call him a Brahmin artist.
That's true. So Dalits are the only caste mentioned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, there's a black artist and there's no white artist. There is an artist.
Right.
So it's an ongoing fight. It's a struggle. It's still a struggle.
And this is the thing, right? Like, so what do you do? I mean, because you feel like you have to assert this identity, and yet you don't want to be defined by it. Then how do you? And then I've read that there are Dalit collectives and people who do Dalit arts that are about them being Dalits. So how do you kind of not be defined by it when you kind of want to?
That's the thing.
Talk about it.
I don't want to be boxed. I'm an artist who's a Dalit.
Right.
I can call myself a Dalit artist.
Right.
the other person can't call it. The other can't be like, oh, you're a Dalit artist. No, so it is a conflict. It is, I want to assert, but I also don't want to be boxed.
Mm. Do you have other projects waiting for you then that you feel like, oh, this is what I may go back to, that has nothing to do with being Dalit? It's that more difficult for you now because commute with me, or
I don't think so. I mean, at least in the near future, because that's the thing. In a country like India, caste supersedes everything. It supersedes state. So it's everything, is either directly or indirectly, even if you have to talk about feminist politics, caste plays an important role. So caste is in everything. So,
right.
So I don't think so I can do a production that might not be about caste, because everything is about caste. Because even if I'm doing a play that is not talking about caste, means something. So what does it mean? So who are my crew? What is their caste location? Who are my actors? What is their caste location? Whose text I'm reading? What is their caste location? So caste is an important part of everything we do. It
right.
is. And to remove ourselves from that reality is impossible.
Right, because you're, especially as the Dalit, you're not allowed to forget, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I wanted to ask you earlier, because you call yourself a feminist as well. Is there a lot of gender discrimination among Dalits themselves, or?
Absolutely. Patriarchy exists everywhere. A man. Everyone wants to be a notch above the last person on the food chain.
Yeah.
Patriarchy affects everyone. It also comes from Brahmanical notions.
Right.
So that is why you can't just call it patriarchy. It is Brahmanical patriarchy.
How have you been fighting against, or how have you, I mean, apart from dedicating this work to your mom and talking about women and how they've, how important they are in everyday life, in food, in everything.
So, someone was asking me about what is your aesthetic, because there's a huge school of thought in the country that is, discussed is the Dalit feminist standpoint. So my aesthetic is that. I stand at that juncture and I talk from that positionality, even though I am a man, but I need to talk about what is the Dalit feminist point of view. Like Come Eat With Me is a tribute to not just my mom, but every marginalized mom who are fighting to feed their children not just nutritious food, but tasty food. Food that
it's interesting. You keep say taste, like this is so important.
Yeah, but if you're trying to feed a 4-year-old, because malnutrition is a huge thing in the country, and if you go back and look at, there's something called the midday meal program, where governments gives food to young children who attend government schools. So there's a huge politicization that is happening in the midday meal program, where they are not giving food that. There are organizations that is, giving food as part of the midday meal program.
Right.
Is not giving egg. Is not giving. Is sometimes giving. Onion is considered as impure.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Onion is not to be eaten by the twice born or the Savarna.
Oh, okay.
Meals that are. And these are young kids who are suffering with malnutrition. If you're giving them tasteless, bland food, they will not eat.
Right. So even caste plays in the feeding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Malnourished, really in need kids.
Absolutely, they're like we can give them protein via pulses, but to be able to eat, so much you get. But an egg is highly protein rich.
Right. Sure.
nutrient rich. They're like, no, egg is non-vegetarian. We can't give them.
Yeah.
You
Interesting.
know, it's so tasty food plays an important role. The
Right.
moment the food is tasty, the young kid will eat it.
Right.
So the fight is not just about nutrient-rich food, but it's also tasty food,
And
and
that's the
also
thing too.
taste
Yeah.
that is looked as luxury.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like taste doesn't matter if you're poor and if you're
Yeah,
of another caste, and how much taste brings comfort, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
deliciousness, like pleasure is
Uh,
somehow supposed to be
uh,
alien to them.
and people in power make statements like, "Why do you need taste?" You know,
Okay.
so as much as nutrient food is important, tasty food is also important.
Right. And it's just more of a fun question. What are some of the most comforting flavors?
For me,
Yes. Like comforting, the most delicious. This is like home food.
the chicken
Kinda-
curry and rice
For you.
is something that I just made it.
Oh.
After this is done, I'm going to go eat.
Oh yeah.
It's also takes me to a happy place.
Mhm.
Then there's something called idli. I
Oh
don't know.
yes. Yes.
Yeah,
The-
idli and chutney, especially coconut and peanut chutney. I am a huge.
Oh, I've never heard of
Yeah.
those chutneys. I've only heard
Yeah.
like mango and other ones, but no, I've never heard
No,
coconut.
these are fresh chutneys that they make to eat with idli.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
So these are not very difficult to make. These are
Right.
very easily accessible. And
What about
yeah.
sweets? Do you
So
make sweets or you're not?
I am a foodie, so I eat everything.
Right.
So I'll just quickly tell you a little about what Come Eat With Me was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh,
when I
originally.
so when I started working on it, I was like, okay, what is my food?
Mhm.
If you look at Indian culinary history,
Mhm.
the marginalized food is a huge void.
Yeah.
So where is it?
Mhm.
It is in oral histories. It's in people's mouths.
Mhm.
So I said, okay, you know what? Because I don't know anything about my food, I'm going to travel to the birthplace of my parents,
Mhm.
and I'm going to set shop for 6 months.
Oh.
I will document these recipes.
Ah.
I will come back. I will recreate these recipes, and I will design a menu that is about 8 course,
Oh, okay.
cooked by people from the community,
Mhm.
and do
So
the
like a
show.
tasting menu, very
No, proper 8 course meal.
okay.
So it had all kinds. But because when I was applying for these grants, I couldn't get them because I said, okay, you know what? Let me start with something I know.
Mhm. And you would design that as a performance, not just come and eat, not just a pop-up.
No.
Okay.
As people would eat the 8 course meal, I would tell the stories about each of these
Okay.
recipes and items that they're eating.
Interesting. Okay.
So
But you
that
couldn't
is
get a grant for
I
8 course
couldn't.
meal.
I still don't. This is like a dream project where that's the thing. I'm also experimenting with forms. Like
Mhm.
this could easily be like a documentary
Mhm.
where I travel to places. We see these shows where chefs are traveling to these places, and why can't I do this?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Exactly. We love these kind of shows these days
Yeah,
all over the world.
yeah, and I'm also looking at different forms. So I'm working
Right.
with 2 other artists from the community
Mhm.
who also work with caste and food,
Mhm.
but different form. Like
Mhm.
they're one is an artist, digital artist. One is a writer.
Mhm.
So we three of us are trying to work together to create a moving museum
Yes.
where like for example, a recipe book that is named after women from the Dalit community.
Named after, sorry, there's
Named after the woman who
Oh,
cook
okay.
who cook them. Like for example, in there's a culinary history that
Mhm.
a certain recipe is named after the king
Mhm.
from the king's court it came
Mhm.
from the king's kitchen. So
Right.
it would be like, oh, this so and so king's so and so recipe.
Mhm.
So as a way to as a play on that, I'm naming these recipes by after the woman who cooked them in their kitchens.
Okay.
My mom's chicken curry recipe is available online, which
Oh,
is
nice.
on her name.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so what else would the moving museum
So it
have?
would have many things. It would have sounds from a Dalit kitchen,
Mm,
recipes, stories, and already there's a lot of written material available from Dalit
right,
autobiographies.
right.
If we can sort of derive recipes from those, there's already an artist who does this called Rajashri Gudi.
Mm-hmm.
She does this work beautifully.
Oh, okay.
There are also so many caste elders
Mm-hmm.
who have these stories, who have these recipes,
Mm-hmm.
like sort of acquiring wisdom from them.
Right. Can you talk a bit about Fishes at Offstream? This is a collective that you're a part of, correct? I love it.
Yes. It's a collective that I started with two other
What?
amazing women artists,
Oh,
uh,
cool.
Padma and Nisha.
Uh-huh.
They are also from Bangalore.
Mm-hmm.
So we three were working on something called Fish Head Sambar.
Okay.
It was a play, a performance about memory and
Mm-hmm.
how the majoritarian government is sort of erasing memories of people like me. So that production is on hold right now because we wrote and we became busy with other things. Like I am doing Come Eat With Me. Nisha is
Mm-hmm.
working on something else. Padma is traveling to is in the US right now.
Mm.
So all three of us came together. Me and Padma came from oppressed castes, and
Mm-hmm.
Nisha is a Muslim woman.
Okay.
So all three of us have come together and said, we found a space with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we offer it to the larger community? So
Mm-hmm.
that is how we started Off-Stream Fishes, where we
Mm-hmm.
mainly would do anti-caste work,
Mm.
art around anti-caste work. It is rooted in anti-caste politics.
All right.
Yeah.
Ah, very cool. After interacting, cooking, eating with people of different castes, mostly young people of different castes, what kind of future do you see when it comes to caste system in India?
Wow, that's a very huge
Well,
question.
just to be clear, Dalits are 25% of India, right?
Yes,
Which means over 200 million people,
yes,
which
yes.
is, Thailand times 3 or
Yeah,
4,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's as I said, like there's one Vamsi. There's so
Hmm.
many people who are waiting for a chance, who are, who are still in the margins, who don't have a voice.
Hmm.
And one of the aim of Come Eat With Me is to open these spaces where, because
Hmm.
it's not just about educating the
Right.
the others, but to also to make space for folks like me, because every time I perform, there are few people from the community who come, who attend the show, who share their stories, because
Hmm.
sometimes it's just about to have someone to listen to you.
Hmm.
There's also a certain homogenization that happens. They say, "Oh, you're a Dalit. Oh, you look like this. You speak
Mm.
like this. You eat like this."
Mm.
And Come Eat With Me is also to rupture that, to talk
Mm.
about the heterogeneity of our lives.
Hmm.
We are not stories to tell. We are much more than that.
Hmm.
All of us are having a human experience.
Hmm.
By boxing us to something
Hmm.
is not done. It's taking away the humanness.
Hmm.
So caste system is dehumanizing.
Right.
It says there are humans above you.
Hmm.
You're not human enough.
Mm.
uh, uh, I think the aim, the idea of not just Come Eat With Me, but any of my work is to make that space to reclaim my humanity, and people like me to be able to dignity,
Hmm.
equality, dignity, liberty, fraternity. These are paths that have been shown to us by Dr. Ambedkar. So this is what I aim to have a society that is much more equal, liberal,
Hmm.
uh, uh, to have a life that is dignified. Uh, have dignity in things. Dignity doesn't come because of your identity, but with what you are. So I think to continue this path of making space, because
And not
as
safe space.
no, it's not. It's not. People are easily triggered these days, but I don't. My life doesn't have trigger warnings. So to make space so that people can be heard, can be listened to have space to talk. Because as you said, we're 200, more than 200 million. So where are they? Why are we not listening to them enough?
Have people's stories who are from non-Dalit caste change your views on them as well? Or have there been stories where you're like, oh, now I see things differently, or certain things differently?
Not really, but what has happened to me is also to be able to have a conversation. I can't be confrontational, as I said before. As I said, this is a fight that both of us have to fight. So you will listen to me, but I will also listen to you. Your fight might not be as painful as mine, or the things that I have to fight might be much bigger, but you're still having a fight. Like especially the younger Savarna folk are fighting with their families, because that is what they have to do inward. They have to look inward, look at casteist practices in their households. So this is also a space for them to be like, this is a fight I am fighting, to be able to listen to them. I'm not going to diminish them. That is not what it is. It is to also to be able to listen.
Right. And since you said you're a foodie, this is more a lighthearted question to end. Since you're a foodie, what food would you love to kind of master in your kitchen?
Biryani. And
from anything else from other cultures?
Other cultures. So I'm a huge fan of
biryani is
Italian
Italian.
food. I make a lot of pasta.
Oh, really?
So recently I moved to a new house. Me and my partner has gotten this house. So we
That's
have purchased an oven.
Oh, nice.
So I would like to make a pizza someday. I would like to bake stuff.
Okay.
That's the thing. I want to do so many things.
Yeah.
I also believe food is a wonderful way of showing art as well. It's a wonderful way to tell a story as well.
Right.
And it also makes it simple to be able to talk about food. It encompasses many things. It encompasses gender, sexuality, social identity.
Right.
And I can still... So it's something my dad has told me is people might forget what you say, but they will never forget a meal that they've had with you.
That's true.
So I give that very importance.
Right.
Anyone. So I make sure that if someone's coming to meet me, if we were doing this in a physical space, I would have cooked for you.
Oh, that would be so nice.
But I think, and it is art. Cooking is
definitely
art,
I agree.
And as a performance artist, I relate so much to cooking.
Right.
Yeah, it's my safe space. It's my happy place.
Yeah, definitely. I love to cook as well. It's great. And of course, this oven thing is such an Asian thing, right? Like most of us don't have it in our kitchens.
Yeah.
So it's like it's such a chore to try to find one.
Yeah.
And are you perfecting your biryani at the moment?
No, I just started because the thing is there are infinite restaurants that serve all kind of biryani. So the effort to outcome ratio is too high if you have to cook.
Yeah.
So I'd prefer, but I'm trying to learn.
So would you want to add that as part of your performance one day? This is such a great thing to share, right? Like it's such a great dish to share.
Maybe not really, because because there are so many things that. So in my performance, I talk about say, for example, if this is not a proper number, but say if I'm talking about 10
Mm-hmm.
Recipes. In the future, I would like to have all those 10 recipes.
Mm.
And biryani is not one of them.
Okay. I see. And what's the immediate future of Come Eat With Me within the next 2 to 3 months to 6 months?
So I'm trying to perform in other cities. So I've performed in Delhi.
Mm-hmm.
In the next 2 months, I'm trying to perform in Bombay.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, I'll travel abroad as well to perform. So there are people who are reaching out. So,
Right. Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
And do you see it working in a different way in another country where there's no caste system? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, you're talking about the food you eat. I think one of the main aspects is hunger.
Mm-hmm.
So caste system or not, hunger is something people can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, yeah, it might be a little different, but it will.
And where can we follow your work?
So mostly I put everything on my social media, that is Instagram.
Okay.
I'm building again in India to be an artist and to make money is difficult. So I'm trying to raise funds to create a website for my work.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
And your Instagram account is at
Sri Vamsi Matta, SRIVAMSIMATTA. It's my full name.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And can you recommend 3 books or artworks that if we want to follow, if we want to learn more about Dalits or art by Dalits, what would you recommend?
There's a wonderful book written by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar called Annihilation of Caste. It's available for free on many websites.
Okay.
On Columbia, he studied at Columbia
University, yes, yeah.
Yeah, so Columbia has a huge Ambedkarite archive.
Right.
Yeah, so you should check out Ambedkar's work. There are some brilliant contemporary artists of my time who are working on caste. So on Instagram, you can find Bakery Prasad.
How do you spell the name?
Bakery,
The name?
Bakery, Prasad, Prasad. Bakery Prasad is a digital artist who does amazing work. Then there is Rahe Punyashloka. He's a writer and an artist as well. On Instagram, he's known as Art Edgar, ARTEDAKAR. Art Edgar. And yeah, if you go to these profiles, you'll find many wonderful people as well. There's another community medicine doctor, Dr. Sylvia Karpagam, who's actually fighting the caste nature of midday meal program in Karnataka. People should check out Dr. Sylvia Karpagam's work.
Can you spell her last name just in case?
Sylvia Karpagam, KARPAGAN.
Thank you so much, Vamsi, for being on the show. It was great talking to you. It was so fascinating. And good luck with Come Eat With Me. I hope we can, meet one day at your show. And I would love to go see your show one day.
Yes, absolutely. It will be great.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Bangkok Offstage is created, hosted, and edited by Gattaket Bunkan and Amitha Amranand. The intro and outro tracks are Quicksand by Wildlight and Probably Shouldn't by Jay Lang.